Hey everyone, John from Beyond ARTV. It is time for another episode of my weekly countdown series, 7 on Sunday. And today I'm going to be talking about 7 overlooked or else kind of forgotten albums by bands that are quite well known. And what I mean by that is that every band out there has one record that either shies away from commercial success or maybe critical praise and just gets forgotten in the process, even though it is worth checking out. And a lot of these records today are ones that I love, but I think it's worth noting that not every record that I'm going to talk about is something that I totally love. It's just something that I see as maybe being in their catalog. It does have some great tracks on there, but it just didn't perform the way either the band wanted it to, or maybe fans didn't connect with it because it had a drastic sound change, and maybe they came around years later, but it turned into something like a cult success. So I want to touch on those records today, give them the praise or else maybe the criticism and praise that they deserve, and give you reasons and maybe a few tracks to check out if you have never heard them before. Be sure to leave a like on this video today. I do hope you enjoy the idea I had for this one. I found it fascinating a while back, and I finally made it come to the light. It was an idea that I had bouncing around, and I was like, when am I going to do this? And I said, you know what? This is the week. If you're able to, guys, support me on Patreon. It's that top link in the description down below. It helps videos like this keep coming on this channel, Beyond ARTV, and my main channel, ARTV, on a monthly basis. Other than that, leave suggestions for future episodes in the comments, thumbs up the ones you like, and here's my first pick.
My someday's gone now.
The All-American Rejects actually just dropped new music in the form of the Sweat EP before I recorded this video, and I have to say, I like those songs. You guys have been asking me to talk about them, so here you go. I like both songs. I think out of the two, Close Your Eyes and Sweat, I prefer Sweat because whenever I listened to the previews, I was like, I'm really not gonna like these songs, but honestly, they came through, they're pretty catchy. The second one, Close Your Eyes, has a little bit more of an electronic tinge, and they didn't really write the majority of it, but still, somehow they made it their own, and I'm actually pretty impressed. I really did not think I'd like the tracks. And many of you are going, the All-American Rejects? They're still a thing? Yes, they are. They never really stopped. They just kind of went on a hiatus. I know everybody hates that word. They're thinking Fall Out Boy and they're breaking up. And no, Fall Out Boy's not on this list. Fully adieu. It's not underrated anymore, people. I know you're probably thinking to yourself, John, how did a band like the All-American Rejects go from Hot 100 success with Gives You Hell, follow-up singles I Wanna, and even The Wind Blows being pretty successful? How do they go from that to just really kind of fizzling under with Kids in the Street just 3.5 years later or something like that? It's simple. It's just they didn't have a hit on this album. It just didn't have that appeal like Gives You Hell did, or even I Wanna. Here on this album, I really do feel like they did some of the experimenting right. And it's not that it was that zany, it was that out there. It's just some of the stuff was more theatric, like Walk All Over Me. I like that track so much. Walk Over Me is one that really just has this power and chorus that's a little bit zany, a little bit wacky and that sort of thing. It's out there, it's fun, it's spry, and it has a little bit of pep in its steps. Sunday's Gone was a great choice for the first song to be released on the album, and it really just got people hyped up that this album was coming. It was a thing, and I think it's fantastic. It's so bitter and angry. And then you have the title track, Kids in the Street, which I think did a great job of combining synthesizers, guitars, and really some passionate and nostalgic lyrics. But not just the singles like that, even some of the deep cuts like Gonzo, I For You, the closing track, which is a summation of everything on the record, and Fast and Slow, which really got the experimentation right. It had a great guitar tone on that one. Really, if you're gonna check out this album, I have to recommend Fast and Slow, Someday's Gone, and of course the closer, I For You.
Like a bird, hovering above, in the smoke and turn.
2014 was a weird year not only for myself because it was a transitory year in my life, but also for Coldplay because they put out a breakup album that was very much electronics filled. It was something that was odd for them. And even though they did score some hits on this record, the hits didn't last that long beyond A Sky Full of Stars. It wasn't really an album thing. It was more of like, oh, that song was really catchy and the rest of them are kind of mellow. But almost every other song on this album, yes, everything is so good. The vibe, I could just I take that one song out. In fact, whenever I listen to this, I skip right over it because every other song just really feels seamless to me. It's one of those things where I feel like you should play this album if you're at a hard spot in your life. You can see the lead single Magic, and you see him holding on to that hope. Chris Martin and his wife Gwyneth Paltrow broke up. They got divorced, and that was what was going on and what inspired this album. And you can feel that pain, him holding on to the love, the magic that he felt at that one time. And you see him going for that, and then of course to moments like Always in My Head, where he's just reflecting. And I love kind of almost the gospel styled vocals that really just haunt that tune in the background. This album is built around electronics, some pianos, some really simple guitar, and heavy bass riffs that just go note for note. Everything really stands out here. Guys, you have to check out this record. Honestly, I know me talking about it is only going to be one thing, so go play a couple of the songs for yourself. I would suggest starting with Midnight and Always in My Head. Yellowcard were a very commercially successful band, in fact peaking pretty much in 2003 with their massive album Ocean Avenue. The follow-up that came out in 2006 was called Lights and Sounds, and it just wasn't the hit that record label executives were looking for, and they were pretty much knocking on their door after that came out saying, hey, where was our huge hit on that? And I think it's a crime that Lights and Sounds, the track, was not a bigger hit, or even Rough Landing Holly, because those are two of their absolute best songs ever released, including the acoustic song Empty Apartment. Come on. But they followed it up again. The band said they were let down with themselves. They pushed it too sad on Lights and Sounds, so let's mix it up here on Paper Walls. And honestly, I feel like this is one of the best albums of their career. This, alongside When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes. It features the perfect blend of those hard, biting tunes like The Takedown, Fighting, and Cut Me Mick, some of my absolute favorite Yellowcard songs. And then the slower, more emotional moments like Dear Bobby, which was written from the perspective of Ryan Key, the lead singer of this band's grandparents. It's a very sad one. It was a note that he found, and you really see them beyond their death. He really just amplifies their life. Check out more songs. I would have to recommend Dear Bobby, You, Me, and One Spotlight, and probably The Takedown for anybody who has never heard this record before. And if you like those, keep going.
Is there another reason for you staying? Could you believe who we knew tries to stay? Here is another one that rides a shame. With your word mind, I would like.
You're probably wondering, John, how the hell does Nirvana qualify for this list? They're one of the biggest bands ever. They're still on everybody's clothing. People talk about them. It's Kurt Cobain this. Yes, that's true, but to be fair, I've only really mainly ever gotten requests to cover like Nevermind, which I did review, and In Utero, and either that or else top 10 Nirvana songs when. I understand by saying that people only request those albums that people are now going to request Bleach, the record that I'm talking about today, but I still feel like it gets a bit forgotten about in their discography, which is kind of immense with all of those deluxe editions, the box sets, the B-sides, everything like that. Bleach, with its original 11 or else 13 songs, depending on which edition you got. If you got it at first, it only had 11. Now it has 13 or even more with all the 20th anniversary deluxe edition tracks and everything like that. But as an album, this is something very different for Nirvana. They didn't have Dave Grohl on the drums yet. It was something where they had Chad Channing. He's a very talented drummer, and they had a different sound at this time. It was much darker. It influenced their future tone as a band, but Kurt Cobain was just starting to develop himself as a songwriter, and you could see songs like Blue, which were big. It was something that definitely just could blow the roof off of a place. In fact, they continued playing this live throughout their career, and that was something that was kind of rare because they didn't really acknowledge the majority of the tracks from Bleach as they got bigger and more successful. But that and About a Girl were singles from this release that are definitely worth listening to. But beyond that, there's really some weird tracks that just go into other tones and darker ones, like I mentioned, some heavy screams and guitar guitars, just a wall of noise that can push themselves up against you, or maybe a little bit more of a restraint on moments like Love Buzz, which was a cover song. And then you've got moments of almost paranoia on Negative Creep, where you're self-loathing and self-questioning and stuff like that. And Swap Meet. It's just one of those records that's chocked full of a different style and a different variety of music, but it all fits together very, very well. And if you've never listened to this record from Nirvana, and you know Nevermind and even some tracks from In Utero, I would definitely suggest listening to ones like Paper Cuts, Negative Creep, and Blue. And you can't forget Floyd the Barber for good measure.
Already dead to me now, 'cause it feels like I'm watching something die.
Mr. Beck Hansen is quite the individual. Beck is a talented dude, he's got a lot of albums under his belt, but he's also done some very diverse projects, and Sea Change that came out in 2002 is one of those. It definitely got praised by the critics, but still, by fans to this day, I hear everybody asking me to review Odelay, I'll see them talking about Mellow Gold in comments places somewhere, and then Gyro, and even the Information and follow-up albums like Morning Phase, which had a similar vibe to Sea Change. But I think the best way that I can describe this record is like this. Beck is that guy that's like maybe your friend that's a little bit wild, a little bit crazy. He's out there living his life, touring, playing music, but at the end of the day, maybe that guy needs to sit down and get out and channel his feelings somehow. And Sea Change was this for Beck. In fact, his father contributed a lot to this record, some of the string arrangements and that sort of thing, and I know you're thinking, strings and Beck? I've never really heard that. Maybe you've only heard Morning Phase and have never heard of this album. Well, this is where he did it first, and honestly, I feel like this is where he did it best. Not that I don't love Morning Phase, I think this is just the stronger of the two releases. This is one where he was really putting himself out there on the line. He was almost just sad and depressing on some of these moments, and if you've never heard this record before, you're going to be very surprised if you've just listened to songs like Hell Yes, or Cell Phone's Dead, or Loser, and stuff like that. Listening through this album, it's going to make you feel the heartache that he feels, whether it be exhaustion, or just tortured mind, or a relationship, whatever it might be that's falling apart for Beck. I think he does a great job of really making the instrumentation and the vocals and lyrics line up into making you feel that as well. If you'd like to get into this record, want a few songs to try, I would have to say start with the opening track, The Golden Age, and also listen to Already Dead, which is just beautiful in the vocal department, and Little One, which is really catchy, and even though it's very simple, it's very effective.
I wanna be free, I wanna be loved, I wanna be more than you're thinking of. Everything seems to be a strange when you're alone.
Hats off, Mr. Yuri. You came up with some great songs, especially on the bonus track edition of this record, which there are several versions of that for Vices and Virtues, but this record that came out in 2011 is something special. Even though I don't love the standard track listing of this, the songs that come in the bonus tracks are just some of the best of Panic's career. And if you've never heard these, along with the record itself, which there are fantastic ones there, obviously Nearly Witches, Ever Since We Met, Sarah Smiles, the Ballad of Mona Lisa, which was the lead-off single from this thing, and it gets ingrained in your head instantly. This record really just came for some reason at the lowness of their commercial and popularity success. It's very weird. It's something that only sold about 50,000 first week, and they really spiked after that again once they lost Spencer Smith, and at this time they were just a two-piece. I don't know, it doesn't quite make sense, but the fandom sparked back up again, coming with 2013's Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die. But Vices and Virtues came out, and I think that to this day, it's probably their most underrated project, because you look back to Pretty Odd, and that was their last one as a whole band, and everybody talks about that all the time. And then you have Too Weird to Live, and obviously Death of a Bachelor, and people are eating those up like it's the best thing they've ever released. But look back to Vices and Virtues. This was their most straightforward rock release, in my opinion, and I think it worked out well for them, catering to that alternative crowd. And with songs like Kaleidoscope Eyes that have almost more of a cheeky, theatrical feel to them, and then Turn Off the Lights, which is a powering, roaring anthem, Oh Glory and Stall Me, which are catchy as hell. It's just something that you cannot go without hearing. Please look up all the bonus tracks from this, along with Nearly Witches and the Ballad of Mona Lisa, if you've never heard this album.
He stopped in Vegas
Claiming their rightful throne today, we have Green Day's Warning that came out in 2000. Obviously, they soared back to their successful heights, had hits all over the place in 2004 with American Idiot, even their follow-up 21st Century Breakdown, but for a while, people were really starting to doubt Green Day. In that, they put out one of their best albums ever, and that is such a shame that people tend to forget about this release because it is just epic. It's a monumental moment for them and Billie Joe Armstrong as a songwriter and singer. Everybody was doing their job correctly here. They were playing with a little bit more of a folk and even funk sound on some of the songs. Church on Sunday was incredibly fun. Castaway had a great vibe to it, which was, as it would imply, more islandy, acoustic guitar really leading the way on that one. Minority being a massive single that definitely did get some attention, but then on the other hand, there were overlooked singles like Waiting, which is something that still gets played live. Thank God I got to see that whenever I saw them this year, and just a different feel. It was something that I feel like Billie Joe Armstrong was taking various ideas that had been floating around for a while, they had been building up, and then he put it into a record that is split between his own personality, politics, and then maybe somebody else's perspective, like, oh, I don't know, Blood, Sex, and Booze, which seems like it's a song about getting off to being tortured by someone. It's weird, it's fucked up, and in a way, it's super, super cool. As a record, Warning is fantastic, and if you want some songs to try the one that I just mentioned, Blood, Sex, and Booze, Waiting, the underrated single, and Castaway, all fantastic gems. What did you guys think about my choices for overlooked albums by well-known bands? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know what else you would have included for this list. Like I said, be sure to leave a like on the video, support on Patreon at that top link, or in the card in the annotations in just a second in the end screen. My Patreon is over there in the corner if you're able to support me there, and if you would like to see last week's episode of SOS, click right here, or another video that I did this week on Beyond ARTV, click right here. Socials are all in the description down below, and other than that, I'll see you very soon right here on Beyond ARTV.